We had a beautiful life, enjoyed everything, and we lived in society just like Jewish people here. Totally accepted, there was nothing special until Hitler brought in this Jew hatred in Germany, and since we have lost 3/4 of our territory in the First War, Hitler made us allies by promising that we can have those territories back if we join them. So we said, that sounds good. And my father, when he was called in the army, he was actually quite happy to be part of the army. The only problem was that with this alliance came the anti-Semitism into Hungary too. And eventually they took away his rank and ripped off his stripes and took away his weapon, and he became part of the Jewish slave labor section of the army, which meant that these Jewish guys were digging the ditches in military in gunfire, and it was a win-win situation. If they were shot by the Russians, there was one less Jew to worry about, and if they weren't shot, then the ditches got deeper. And I was very upset about this because he was a real patriot. I mean, we were a patriotic Hungarian family, and if you would have asked me, what are you, I wouldn't have said I'm a Jew, I would have said I'm Hungarian. We were much more conscious about being Hungarian than Jewish, and it was the Hungarian anti-Semites that were saying that we are not part of them, and that alienated us. And I never forget when they started to spread around Budapest a poster where Christ was on the cross, sadly hanging his hand down, and a little Hungarian girl was looking up to him in Hungarian costume, and a drop of his blood dropped on her cheeks. And there was a Jewish businessman, a fat guy with a yellow star, who stabbed him in the chest, and that was the way the blood dropped on her face. And on the bottom of the poster it said, "They killed him," meaning the Jews killed our Messiah. Mm-hmm. No, it was nowhere said that Christ was born into a Jewish family. That they collected us in particular houses from which they would have taken us to the death camps. And in this house, and then eventually they raided these houses, and with one raid they took my mother away and some members of our family who moved in with us, and I looked down from the 5th floor and I could see my mother led away by the Hungarian Nazis. And the Hungarian Nazis were worse than the German Nazis. So there I was left alone with my grandfather and 70 fish in my fish tank. Mm-hmm. And it was strange that you got into a situation where you knew that you don't know the future. And here we worry about if you don't know what is the future going to be 3 years from now, like when you finish school, what's going to happen, so on. You have to know the future. Well, we were in a period when we didn't know the future within 24 hours. So I just said, my mom is gone, we'll just see what we can do. Then when I went into my grandfather's room, I found that he was dead. He swallowed a bottle of pills. He was afraid to be alone with a little 13-year-old boy. And so they took him away. And then the next day there was another raid where they took, on the first raid they took only kids from 14 up. The second raid they took kids from 10 up. So I had to pack up to, we're always packed. I had a knapsack. Every Jewish person had a knapsack ready in case they take us away. So they came and they said I have to come down, and I stepped out of the apartment, and our neighbors, two lovely Roman Catholic Gentile ladies, said, Tom, we don't let you go down. I said, well, what do you mean? I have to go down. He said, no, we want you to hide in our apartment. I said, it's a terrible danger. You're endangering your life. He said, no, leave that between us and God. So I didn't know what to do, but I went into their apartment, and they said, well, why don't you hide under this bed? So I crawled under the bed, but then when I was under the bed, I said, what do I do if one of if a Hungarian Nazi comes in to check if there are any Jewish people left, and he looks under the bed and says, well, what are you doing there? So I felt uncomfortable, and I crawled out and I said, Mrs. Alfred, could I maybe just sit down on your toilet? Now in Hungary we had the bathroom with a toilet and then a separate no, we had the bathroom without a toilet. Mm-hmm. The toilet was separate so that one person could take a bath and the other could...
It's even now like this.
So I thought that I go in, and just pretend to have a diarrhea. Mm-hmm. And that sounded more presentable. And so I was sitting there and I suddenly hear a knock on the door, and a Hungarian Nazi came in just to check if nobody's hiding, and I could hear his steps go by the door, and apparently what these neighbors told me that he stuck his bayonet under every bed without even looking, so he could have I could have been killed even or wounded by his bayonet. Then he came out, and then he opened all the doors, and he would open. There were 3 doors on my left side, 2 doors. The first one there were the towels, and the second one there were household appliances, and he figured probably the 3rd door is the same thing, but that was where I was. Mm-hmm. And I believe it was really God who blinded him, and he went by, and then he went away, and the house became quiet again. So the moment the last one left, I came out of this toilet and we embraced each other with these 2 ladies, and that's the way I escaped Auschwitz. A little later, there was again another knock on the door, and there was this lady who was the daughter of the shoemaker who was sympathetic to Jewish people, and she said that your mother is here. And my mother was hiding behind a pile of bricks in a brick factory where they collected them before they would start the march to Germany. And so she had some papers which would allow us to go to a Swiss protected house. Mm-hmm. The Germans were chummy with the Swiss because that's where they kept the money they would have had in case they lose the war, or even if they won the war. Then with the Swedish because they needed their steel, and the Vatican to keep the Catholics under control. So there are some houses that these countries were responsible for, and we were told that they would not take us away from there. Which was true for a little while, but then eventually they started to raid these houses too, and in one case, a classmate of mine, his whole family, and the rest of them were lined up on the Danube shore and machine gunned into the river. And every single night there was another house that was emptied and machine gunned. So when they kept waking us up eventually, and threatened us to be taken away after 3 nights, always we lined up, and then they said there's no cars. And there were no cars anymore. And they did this harassing in the morning for no other reason than to bother us. So I just told my mother that, I can't live this. She said, well, where do you want to go?